So again, I'm Phoebe, and I spent 5 or 6 weeks this summer in Morocco with American Unofficial ambassadors. And I'm starting off with this picture here to kind of illustrate what AUA's purpose is all about. Put this disclaimer that those are not my hands. AUA, or America's Unofficial Ambassadors, is a citizen diplomacy initiative dedicated to building mutual understanding and positive impressions between America and the Muslim world. And they do that through people-to-people partnerships with locally led community initiatives that work in areas of education, human rights, and the environment. For example, volunteers might work with a national park or with communications efforts through local NGO like community centers or interfaith center, or they might volunteer at school teaching English or computer skills, or in my case, French. And AUA has summer service programs in Zanzibar, which is Tanzania, Indonesia, Tajikistan, and Morocco, which is where I was. Morocco is in the northwest corner of Africa, kind of curves over, it's like right across from Spain. And I was right about in the middle of it, in the Middle Atlas Mountains, staying in a town called Ifrane. And we were staying at a university there, which is like our home base for the 6 weeks that we were there. But for my service, I worked in a town called Tarmalat, which is about a 10-15 minute drive from campus. And there, I mean, you see what the campus looks like, but in the village it is a totally different world. The name of the village is Tarmalat, and that means sands in the local Arabic dialect, because it is basically just a collection of very rocky hills where there's not rocks. There's sand flowing everywhere. And it's a low-income shepherding village. That's where they get most of their income, through the livestock that they raise, and have horses, cows, chickens, donkeys, sheep, and goats. This is a picture I took one day during class where there were 3 grown men and one of my students trying to get all these donkeys onto the bed of a truck, and the donkeys were not having it. So hilarity ensued. And other areas where they get their income are through tourism. A lot of the older men in the village, or some of the kids, will take the horses and donkeys to places like a national park where tourists will often go, and they will offer rides to some of the tourists who come there. And then also the women of the village have a weaving co-op where they use the wool from the animals that they raise, and they have their own handmade looms in their houses, and it's all made by them. And I have a couple examples here that I'm going to pass around so you can see what they do. That's kind of how life works in the village. They also don't own the land that they're living on. It's owned by another local tribe, and people of Tarmalat are basically just squatting on the land. So they are not allowed to build permanent structures. All their houses are made out of earth and stone with rusty tin roofs, and they will move up the mountain during the summer, and then during the winter they will move below the snow lines to lower ground. But they don't officially live there, and they're not allowed electricity or running water, because then the government would be condoning squatting on the land there. The one permanent building in the village is the school, and that was set up by the government when some local citizens were concerned about children getting to school, because the nearest schoolhouse was several kilometers, which is at least a few miles away, and across a roadway, and And if you knew or if you drove there, you would not want to be sending kids to cross the roads because speed limits are rarely followed, and most of the roads there are just 2-lane roads, and people will pass each other without any regard for how close the oncoming car is. So I feared for my life more than once just getting to and from the village. And the children will have regular classes in here during the school year where they have teachers who are also sent by the government. But during the summer, they don't really have a lot to do, and they're very marginalized and pushed to the edges of society. So no one really takes an interest in these kids' lives from outside the village. And they were very happy to have us there. So this is kind of what our classroom looks like. They have desks and there's a blackboard up front, and they had some textbooks that had obviously been handed down for a while, but they didn't have a lot of just regular paper lying around and not a lot of pencils and other supplies like that. So we brought in a lot of what we used in the classroom. Here's some pictures from when we first met the kids, and they were very shy at first, but they did eventually open up, and they really enjoyed playing games with us. And the one thing that really surprised me about these kids was how eager they are to learn. Because if you had American kids their age going to summer school, they'd be like, oh, why do I gotta go to school? I don't wanna go to school. And these kids are waiting for us at the door every day when we get there. And they, as soon as we open that door, they rush right in and sit down. And they're just so eager to start learning, and it's really amazing to work with kids like that. But despite appearances, things were not as orderly as they are pictured here. We did have a lot of rowdy kids, and quite often the girls would keep the boys in line. And occasionally we'd have small fights break out, but usually nothing too serious. And they're not required to stay in the school the whole time, because a lot of them will have jobs out in the village, so they may have to run out during the middle of the lesson to go take care of that, or they'll just run out to go to the bathroom or for who knows what, but we couldn't really do much to keep them in there. But when we did, they're all very eager to give out the answers, me, teacher, calling me, and they love volunteering, and they loved competing with each other. We did a lot of this team versus that team, boys versus girls, that kind of thing, because that really got them motivated to learn and to really understand vocabulary. And then sometimes we'd work one-on-one with the younger kids who are maybe just starting out with their first words in French, but not all of them. I mean, we're just starting out. Some of them had a few years of French at least, so we were just building on what they already knew. And they love coming up to the board and writing on stuff, but they can't always reach it. But they will always give their best shot, and it's very encouraging to see them do that. And these are some of our girls during one of the girls versus boy competitions. We would have charades games where they'd act out vocabulary, or this is your elbow, and they'd have to guess the word, and they'd write it on the board. But on days when we had a lot of kids running in and out and we couldn't really keep them in control, we had to come to terms with the fact that at the end of the day, if we managed to teach one kid one thing, it was still a successful day. And so we came up with a lot of creative activities to kind of keep them in the classroom as much as possible and keep them interested in what they were learning. So we do partner activities, we do crosswords and word searches, and we had created an activity to help them figure out how to form sentences in French. And the boys caught on a little slower. That took maybe a couple days. The older ones caught on quicker, and they caught it to the younger ones. And then the girls caught on very quickly. They created a lot of really good sentences, even if some of them don't always make sense, like the one there at the bottom, I am sad in the picture. Which usually they're not. They were very eager to be in pictures most of the time. They loved learning about the body parts. We had a bunch of games, like we talked about head, shoulders, knees, and toes, and gave them a word search for that. And we also found a lot of coloring worksheets, which worked really well for the younger ones, because then they got to see the picture and like associate that with the word. And we played a lot of Pictionary, which was fun for them to shout out the answers and guess and that. And then we made a memory card game for them where we have a picture of the word and then the word written out. And we had to create a lot of rules for this one because they would either peek at the cards, so we made a rule that if they touched them, they lost their next turn. And if they took too long picking the next card, they would also lose a turn because they realized fairly quickly that, oh, this set of vocabulary is all the same color cards. Let's find those first. Or, oh, this card has been marked somehow, like maybe it got torn up and we taped it together again. Or there's some kind of crumpling here. So we know which cards those are. Let's find those first. And so at the end, we redid all of the cards and tried to find a lot, and we kept adding and adding and adding. And they would also liked going outside. We'd toss the ball around and give them a category. They had, whenever they caught the ball, they had to yell a category. Like we'd give them body parts, and they had to be like elbow, ears, eyes, and they had a lot of fun with that. And then the last week of our placement, we had a couple other volunteers come and run a summer camp after we finished with our lessons. So we taught them some games like limbo, and we played jump rope with the kids, even the boys. And one of the girls is from Jamaica, so she taught them a game that she played as a child growing up in Jamaica, and they had a lot of fun with that. And then we taught them how to play Frisbee, which they had a lot of fun with that, and how to punt a football. And then we even taught them baseball. We didn't get much farther than batting practice because outs are a foreign concept. They've mainly grown up playing soccer, so nobody gets out in soccer. So they didn't really understand running around the bases and you get tagged and you're out. But they did have a lot of fun playing batting practice with a wiffle ball bat and a deflated soccer ball. And then the younger ones loved getting piggyback rides. This is Mohammed, is the son of our driver, who took us to and from the village every day. And this here is my girl Fatanza. She's probably the most adorable human being I've ever met. And she is just so cute. We all wanted to take her home at the end of the trip. And she is actually quite a little diva. You can't see it in the picture, unfortunately, because cut her head off, but she's got my sunglasses on, and she's standing here. So, we had a lot of fun with them. These are Zakia and Siham, and they were two of the girls who helped keep the boys in line the most. They were definitely great leaders in the classroom, and they helped out so much with just keeping some form of discipline in the class. And this is what he is the son of the head woman of the village, and he's got jugs to either fill up with water, or they might have oil in them, things they might be taking to sell. And then at the end of our placement, we painted a mural on the side of the school with the world and then all of their handprints inside. And then they had a lot of fun with the handprints, because oh my God, our hands are green. And everybody wanted to be involved. They just had a great time with that, and they painted our names next to it. Although they couldn't spell my friend Katie's name because they don't have that name in their culture, so they called her Kitty the whole time we were there. And it was funny because she's got a tattoo of a cat right behind her ear, so they found that, and they were like, meow, meow. So she was known as Kitty the whole time we were in Morocco. And so now you can see that from on the side of the schools, you're driving up the road into the village. So that's what next year's volunteers will see. But we had a great time with the kids, and they learned so much in just a few weeks. And we are really hopeful that they'll keep going, and that what we did will help in the future, because if they want to go to university, they will need to pass an exam in French. And so what we were doing was vitally important for them to have better futures. And I'm really hoping that at least some of them will get those. Thank you.
We can open the floor for questions if you want to ask anything.
How did you know what vocabulary that you needed to teach them? And did you encounter a time where you were wanting to teach them words that they had never encountered before with that word described because of their limited scope of their influence in their village?
Well, we would start out with a game where we write a letter on the board, and we'd be like, okay, now tell me words that begin with the letter M or whatever. And they would call out words that they knew. And so that was kind of how we gauged what they knew and what they didn't know. And then a lot of what we did was through pictures. I mean, we did a lot of our vocabulary drawing pictures of animals or pictures of food, and then body parts, we drew a lot of those on the board. But for more like abstract concepts, it was difficult. Like, we wanted to teach them, I want to do this, or I like this, and we don't know how to communicate that. So sometimes we'd have a student from the university come out and help us sometimes with communicating things that you can't just say without like reverting back to English.
Even some foods, did they know all the foods that you were showing them? Or
Yeah.
That was
Some of them had more instruction than the others, so they were able to communicate that to the younger kids who didn't know as many. And then we took like a crash course in survival Arabic at the university, so we knew maybe some of them, so we could say like apples, like pomme in French, and then tufa in Arabic. And they would understand that.
What other kinds of preparation did you do for your trip?
They had these webinars through Google Hangouts before we left to kind of tell us about the culture and about safety and just background information on the country, just so we knew like what we were getting into and what we could expect at our placements.
So did you stay in the village, or did you live outside of the village and then go to the village every day?
We stayed at the university campus, and then we were driven to the village every day, and we leave in the afternoon after we're done with our lessons.
It looked cold. Were you up on the mountain then? It's their summer right now?
Yeah, but their summers are about like summers here.
Oh,
You just have to do them in maxi skirts and long sleeves and scarves.
because of the culture.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you definitely have to be a lot more conservative over there than you would here.
How long were you with these children?
Well, we spent 6 weeks total in the country, but we only spent 5 at the placement because the first week was just orientation.
I imagine you could get really attached in that length of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some of the kids we wanted to just like, can we hide them in their suitcases?
How was the food?
Oh, food was great. The people in the village were very generous with their food. Like, we were there for a week before Ramadan started, and every morning we'd get there around 10 or 10:30, and we'd be like ushered into the head woman's house right away and given bread and tea with like olive oil, butter, or honey, whatever they had on hand at the time. And you ate until you could not eat anymore, because it's a very cultural thing with their hospitality. It's what they have to offer you, and it's very rude if you turn that down or if you leave some behind. So you eat until it's all gone, and then they would give us more food at lunch. They would give us a big giant bowl, like a stew or couscous, and you would eat all of that too. And so we'd get home at the end of the day and feel like we don't need dinner.
Explain Ramadan to the rest of the kids.
Ramadan is it's a month in the Islamic calendar where they fast during the day and they eat at night after sundown. And they don't even drink water during the day, so it's just really hard to do in 100-degree heat in the dusty village. But we participated in Ramadan with them for part of the time. But they were very happy that we did that. They felt it was very respectful, and they even if like they would always ask us just to be sure that we were fasting, and if we weren't, they would still offer us bread and tea. So they were like very happy when we did it, and still respectful of us when we opted not to.
There are certain, there's a culture of not needing to adhere to Ramadan when you're traveling, right?
Yeah, there are certain occasions when you don't have to fast. Like you don't have to fast if you're traveling far. If it's like a day trip, then you should probably still fast. But if you're going a considerable distance, then you have the option to not fast. And obviously, pregnant women don't have to fast. Girls do not have to fast on their periods. But that's all I can really think of as far as circumstances where you're not required to fast. Oh, I think you can also you can break the fast if you are really going to be sick. Although some people will still take that very seriously, and they're like about to drop dead in a field, and they will still refuse to eat. Thomas?
At what age do kids start fasting?
I think in their teens. We had some of the older kids who would come less often in Ramadan because they were fasting, and so you just can't be sitting in the school all day. And they also decreased their working hours during Ramadan.
Didn't the time change?
Oh yeah, they also the clock gets set back an hour during Ramadan because of just it's easier to fast until 7:45 than it is till 8:45.
That's more where you're asleep.
So they knew you were Christians, and so how did that dynamics, was there anything you observed there?
Well, not all of us were Christians, but they were respectful of our religion, and they didn't bother us about that, and we are very respectful of them. They're not, they're very tolerant of other beliefs there.
Did they have electricity at the village?
No. There were a couple houses that had solar panels, but I don't know how they worked or what exactly was connected to them. But they don't have anything that's official from the company or whatever, because they're not allowed to serve them because they're squatting.
So not in the school either then?
No. School had no lights whatsoever. We just relied on what came in through the windows.
So you said it was a ski resort. What did they use for heat in the winter to stay warm?
They've got a lot of blankets, and they make stuff from their animals, and everybody pretty much sleeps together in the houses, because they don't have separate rooms. They're all just one room buildings, so everyone just kind of piles together on a bunch of rugs, and I guess that's how they keep warm in winter.
They do, you had mentioned they switch, get below the tree line too.
Yeah. Yeah, they move below the snow line, so I'm not dealing with the worst of that.
Do you have any interesting experiences while you were there?
All right, listen up, boys and girls, I'm going to tell the police story. It's a tale of how I almost got arrested in Morocco. So we are on our way to our placement, and the student from the university is also with us volunteering, as well as people who are helping us organize a summer camp. So there are 4 of us in the back seat, all cramped in together. And we're just okay, how soon do we get to this village? And then wait, why are we slowing down? Why are we stopping? And then we turn around and there's this giant van behind us, and we're like, okay, what's going on here? And then 2 cops get out, and we're just like, oh my God, what do we do? And the student from the university very helpfully mentions, oh, they probably think you're illegals. And we're like, thank you, because 2 or 3 of us look European at best, so why would we be in here illegally? And I mean, it is a problem there because a lot of people will come up through Morocco and cross over into Spain and France and the rest of Europe. So it is a concern, but I don't think it really applied to us. But our driver gets out, talks to the cops, nobody looks happy, we're kind of starting to freak out a little bit. And then our supervisor from the university shows up, and we're like, okay, maybe this is gonna be okay now. And people start talking more, they start smiling again, we're just like, okay, everything's gonna be all right now. And so our driver gets back in, the cops has us and drive off, and we like stop ahead and we're like, okay, let's go to the village. And then we turn following the cop van. We're like, oh, okay, we're not going to the village. And so we end up at the police station, and our driver and our supervisor get out and go into the police station with the cops. And we are just kind of left to sit on the sidewalk and wonder what's going on. And then about 10 minutes later, the cop comes back out and he's like, will you please come with me? And we're taken into this office where, again, nobody tells us why we're there, what's going on. And then after a lot of waiting, they ask us for our passports. And we're like, oh, we don't have those. And then someone's like, wait, we have our ID cards, those have our passport numbers on them. So we're like, okay, can we go out to the car and get our ID cards, because those have our passport numbers on them. And they let us leave the building unescorted, so we're just like, okay, clearly don't consider us dangerous. But we go back in with our ID cards, they take them, write down our passport numbers, make sure that we're all Americans, they ask us for our birthdays, and still do not tell us what is going on. And we were there for about an hour before they finally let us go. And maybe a few days later, we found out that it was because some taxi drivers in the village had gotten jealous of our driver because he got to take us back and forth every day, and they felt like they were losing money from that. So they called the cops and reported that our driver was supposedly trafficking illegals. And so that was why that whole fiasco happened. And we assumed that whoever was involved got very chewed out and they were in trouble. They let us leave the country though, so everything was good.